We left off today talking about tawaf and talking about the reason why it's the number 7. And Sheikh Omar touched on this idea of putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center of your life. But funny enough, one of the most beautiful depictions or just as far as extractions, because at the end of the day, much of this is tadabbur, much of this is reflection and introspection on some of the deeper meanings. It's actually by Dr. Ali Shari'at. He wrote a book on Hajj or something like that. He talked about this idea of, he spent a lot of time talking about tawaf. So it was a very philosophical book, nothing from nusus or from the text or anything like that, but it was very beautiful. There was one thing he said that did stick with me in that, which is that you can't choose, you don't dictate your pace in tawaf, because the ummah will move with or without you. And so you are part of the ummah does not step to your beat, instead you will move at the pace of the ummah, and we constantly have our own individual salvation as people tied to our communal salvation. So it's this idea of putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center of your life, and truly, subhanAllah, the last few years, they haven't been as crowded as they were in the past. But I remember, my father, who I mentioned, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and give him health. He did Hajj between 1964 and 1964, 6 times in a row. And he has this memory, he said, where he literally got picked up in the crowd and his feet didn't touch the ground for like a good 2 minutes, because he's just moving with the crowd. The tawaf just moves you at its pace. Wow. You move to the pace of the ummah. Our individual success and our ummah success is intimately tied to one another. But it's this idea, right? You are putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center of your life. One of the most problematic pieces is the black stone. And the reason why I say problematic is because you see weird things happen at the black stone. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have never kissed the black stone in Hajj, and I'm okay with that. Because the way people fight each other and kill each other, it's like a bloodbath. To get to the black stone in the days of Hajj, it is not worth it. It completely defeats the purpose. And the Prophet ﷺ, even in times of ease, sometimes did not kiss it, but instead he touched it, or he touched it with his cane one time. He pointed towards it, alayhi salatu wasalam. But the sunnah is, if it's right in front of you, definitely kiss it. But don't beat people up or get beaten up in order to kiss the black stone. It's not worth it. But it's interesting. What is it about this black stone? My father-in-law he's actually here doing Hajj. If I can sneak him in, inshallah ta'ala, to speak to our group, I will. Mashallah, he's a wonderful scholar, and he's come with a Jordanian group. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to sneak him in. But I was attending his khutbahs in Jordan before I came here. He's talking about Hajj. He said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us to kiss one stone and then to stone another stone right afterwards. So that we understand that our connection is not to stones. Our connection is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are following the manasik, we're following the rituals of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's the only reason why we do it. So more than anything else, what did Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu say? Umar, who was known for his idolatry in Jahiliyyah, in the days of ignorance, what did Umar say? He spoke to the black stone. And he said, I know that you do not benefit, nor do you harm, and had I not seen the Prophet ﷺ kiss you, then I would not have kissed you. Meaning, there's a full understanding of Tawheed in the heart. But you're going to see people, again, peace signs, salutes, blowing kisses to the black stone, all types of things when you go to Umrah. So what is the significance of the black stone? Number one, the Hajar al-Aswad, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith in At-Tirmidhi that it came down from paradise, and it was lighter than milk. It was full of nur. It was light when it came down from paradise. But the sins of the sins of the sons and daughters of Adam darkened that stone. So when you see it in its darkness, it is because of the sins, the collective sins. Once again, this idea of the individual tied to the community. We learned that in Uhud, that for the sin of 40 people, even the Prophet ﷺ had his teeth knocked out. The entire ummah had to suffer. We move as an ummah together. So the stone was darkened from the sins of all of mankind over time. But it is a stone from Jannah. So some of the scholars mentioned it is attaching ourselves to a piece of Jannah, touching a piece of Jannah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed that stone to come down in the initial construction while Ibrahim alayhi salam was putting together the Kaaba. We also know in another hadith that du'as are accepted at Al-Hajar al-Aswad, and it will testify on behalf of those who kissed it on the Day of Judgment. The Prophet ﷺ said that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will present Al-Hajar al-Aswad in a way that it would have 2 eyes, وَلِسَانٌ نَاطِقٌ, and a speaking tongue. You imagine that. Now on the Day of Judgment, what else is speaking? Your hands, your tongue is speaking. Your legs are speaking, your limbs are speaking. So he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the black stone will come on the Day of Judgment and it will be speaking. And he said it will testify to the iman of every single person who gestured to it. It will testify to the faith of all of those who gestured to it. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned or Ibn Abbas says the Prophet ﷺ was leaning against the Kaaba. And he pointed towards Al-Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone, and Al-Maqam, Maqam Ibrahim. And he said that these two are 2 jewels from the jewels of Jannah. Had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not concealed their radiance, they would illuminate everything on the earth between the east and the west. So they are 2 jewels, yaqutatan. If you look at Maqam Ibrahim and the black stone, they are 2 jewels from the jewels of Al-Jannah. So they do have their virtue, they do have their benefit, but at the end of the day, we do it because the Prophet ﷺ did it. We don't have reverence to the stone, we have reverence to the one who taught us to kiss the stone, being the Prophet ﷺ. And Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah has a very beautiful statement that he makes. He says that think of yourself as every time when you pass the black stone and you you gesture towards it, it is you're taking bay'ah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're taking allegiance to Allah. It's your pledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single time. That as you're placing Him at the center of your life, that truly you are renewing your covenant with Him over and over and over again throughout this process. Why did the Prophet ﷺ used to touch Ar-Rukn al-Yamani, the Yemeni corner? Anyone know? Yeah. Ibrahim alayhi salam used to touch all 4 corners. So why did the Prophet ﷺ only touch Rukn al-Yamani?
That was the only original corner.
Very good. So we mentioned that the Kaaba used to be a rectangle, but now it is a cube, and the Hijr comprises of the space that would have been the rest of the Kaaba. So Rukn al-Yamani, the Yemeni corner, and the black stone are of the 2 original foundations of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the Prophet ﷺ would touch it, as you know, it was the sunnah to do so. If he was not next to it, he would not touch it, he would not gesture towards it. Tomorrow you'll see people sending a few people, you know, just the muhsineen that are sending some personal shout outs to the Rukn al-Yamani from far away as well. Alright? Don't do anything with it. If you pass by it, then you can touch it. We also see that the Prophet ﷺ, so he made istislam of it, so he touched it alayhi salatu wasalam, but that was all that he did. Hijr Ismail, that area of the Kaaba, represents, as the scholars mention, the original shelter that Ibrahim alayhi salam constructed for his wife Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. And the Prophet ﷺ told Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha to pray there if she can. Don't try it in Hajj, you will get trampled. Alright? So these are things to keep in mind for the next time, inshallah ta'ala. Now what I'm about to go through right now, I'm going to preface this by saying, do not ascribe, as you know, what I'm saying right now to the Prophet ﷺ. Don't ascribe it to a particular scholar from our great tradition. These are my own, not conclusions, but just some reflections on how we compare the journey of Hajj to our rebirth. Okay, so please don't quote it, because this happens to me all the time. Something I say gets ascribed to Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah. They're far better than I am, and it's not proper to do so. And of course, even worse, all of it conclusively to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we do know that generally speaking, the Hajj and the Umrah are simulations of the hereafter. And Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah said, "Mutu qabla an tamutu." It is a show of death before death, wearing the cloth of death, entering through the miqat, entering through a different station. What happens when you enter through the different station? Right? Your hal changes, your state changes. Just as when you enter from the realm of souls into this life, and then from this life into the barzakh, into the realm before the hereafter, and then from the realm of the barzakh
to the day of judgment, to the hereafter. And then from that realm, or it's within one realm, but you go into Al-Jannah or An-Nar, into paradise or hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from hellfire and enter us into Jannah. So the miqat is, in and of itself, very symbolic of that. You are changing your state as you are entering through the miqat, and you are going in your most simple and bare state, going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going to renew that pledge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The goal of Hajj is to go back the way that our mothers gave birth to us, as pure as the day that our mothers gave birth to us. And if you think about this simulation, Arafah commemorates what? Arafah is to come to know. To come to know. The meaning of the word Arafah is to come to know. It is us commemorating that original covenant that we took with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is in that space on that day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took us from the back of our father Adam alayhi salam, and Allah said to each and every single one of us what? Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And you said, Bala, shahidna, yes, we bear witness. So you came to know. Likewise here on Arafah, as you stand on that day, you come to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you talk about Muzdalifah, as you move on and you think about that moment that you took the covenant, where did you go in your existence after you took that covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What happened to us next? Where did we go to? Where did we transfer to? The realm of souls. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Al-arwah junudun mujannada, that the souls are like conscripted soldiers. Those that used to bond or come close to each other, had an affinity to each other in that previous realm, they have an affinity to each other in this realm. And those that felt distant from one another feel distant from one another in this realm as well. Meaning, you know, when you meet someone and you click right away, or you feel like there's an energy, you feel like there's a connection. Al-arwah junudun mujannada. It could be that that was your boy back in the day, as in back in a previous realm, in a previous existence. The souls come close to each other, and some souls feel distant from one another. And obviously the righteous souls naturally feel an affinity towards one another. The Salihin, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst them, they naturally feel a closeness to one another in that realm and in this realm as well. They gather with one another. So you go from taking that testimony with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the gathering of the souls. One of the most striking scenes in Muzdalifah is when you're riding the bus in and you're just taking you're just really having a look at all of these people just, covering the ground. It looks like this strange gathering of people. It truly is a remarkable sight. It's a scary sight because you realize that momentarily you're going to be in it. But subhanAllah, if you take a moment to just really just absorb how beautiful and powerful of a sight it is, it looks like a mahshar, it looks like an assembly of souls. All these people packed into this small space, all dressed so simply, reduced to nothingness. There are no tents in Muzdalifah, no hotels in Muzdalifah. There is nothing. Everyone standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equally, with absolutely nothing. And it resembles in many ways that gathering of the souls. Then you are placed into, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees, what? Into your mother's womb. And as you're placed into your mother's womb, and you come into this realm, what is the first thing that happens to you as you enter into this realm? In a dunya. What happens to you first?
The decree is written.
What is it?
Decree is written.
I'm not talking about the decree being written in the womb, but that happens as well, obviously. The decree is being written. But I'm talking about when you're born into this world. Why do you cry? Shaitan pokes you. The Prophet ﷺ said that every son of Adam, when they are born, the shaitan pokes you. And the shaitan basically is taunting you and saying that you and I are going to have a long life together. I am going to lead you astray. The Ughwiyannak, and the Prophet ﷺ said the only people that were spared from that were Maryam alayhi salam and her son Isa alayhi salam, because of the dua of the mother of Maryam to protect her offspring from the shaitan. So you enter into this world, The shaitan pokes you as you come from the gathering of the souls. That's your introduction into this life. In this rebirth, guess what you do as you are reborn? You stone him first. It's different now, isn't it? It's changed. You are one-upping the shaitan before you start. In this rebirth of myself, as I now move into this new phase of life, and I have come from Muzdalifah, and I've come from Arafah, and I am a different person, I will stone the shaitan. And it's symbolic, obviously, but subhanAllah, you now are conquering the shaitan as opposed to him poking you and taunting you. Now, when you are born, what are the rituals? What are the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ for us to do when we are born? How about the shaving of, so the iqamah and the adhan, when we are saying Allahu Akbar and we're proclaiming dhikr. What about the shaving of the hair? So we also, just like we shave at that time, in this time as well, there's the shaving of the head. There's also something else that your parents did for you. The aqiqah. In the place of the aqiqah, you have the udhiyah. You have the hadi that you present as well. The aqiqah is a gift that the parents present, or as a form of gratitude for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessing them with a child. You are presenting your own gift, your own sacrifice, as a means of gratitude for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you. So subhanAllah, you're going through the motions of rebirth here. And I'm not talking about reincarnation, all right, in a physical sense, but subhanAllah, spiritually, truly, this is a remaking of yourself. And the rituals are so similar. You proceed to your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a tawaf, centering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanAllah, when you go to your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you move into the Day of Judgment, and you move into the hereafter, and you go to your meeting with the Day of Judgment, directly above the Kaaba, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? There is Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, the frequently visited home, where 70,000 angels enter and do tawaf every single day, and they never return. They go to their final meeting with their Lord. You proceed to your meeting with your Lord. And some of the scholars mention, because the sunnah, after you finish your tawaf, before you do the sa'i, what is the sunnah to do? To go and to drink from a zamzam. Imagine if when you go and you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afterwards, you'll have another drink which is from the hand of who? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shurbatan hani'atan mali'atan la nadma'u ba'daha abada. A drink from the hand of our beloved alayhi salatu wasalam. If we drink from it, we will never feel thirsty again. We will never feel thirsty again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that drink. Allahumma ameen. And then you proceed to your sa'i. There's something, wallahi, I got goosebumps when I read this from Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah. It is the most powerful depiction in my mind of the rituals of Hajj, where he mentions in his Ihya, he said, as you are going between as-Safa and al-Marwa, imagine yourself on the Day of Judgment pacing between the scales. The narrations that depict a person frantic on the Day of Judgment, running between his mawazeen, running between his scales, seeing what his scales of good deeds look like and what his scale of bad deeds look like. This is your final determination here. And you're running between those two things, looking for that element. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you that comfort and that security on the Day of Judgment, you are amongst those who have received your book in the right hand. You are amongst those whose scale of good deeds has outweighed their scale of bad deeds. What do? What do? You run to the gathering and you celebrate. I made it. Ha muqra'u kitabiya. Read my book. Inni dhanantu anni mulaqin hisabiya. I knew that this day was coming. There is a celebration. And that is the greatest tahallul on the Day of Judgment, the greatest freeing from any burden and from anything, when you are assured of the safety from hellfire, assured of the safety from punishment, and granted entrance into Jannah, and you are celebrating with the other souls that have been given the same thing. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned an angel, it's an authentic narration, that as you finish your final tawaf, that an angel places his hand between your two shoulder blades and says, go back to your place, and you return completely forgiven, like the day that your mother gave birth to you. You are completely freed at that point. SubhanAllah, this new chance at life that we have here, and everything that we can do to relate this to the hereafter, the akhirah, and to remind ourselves, we did not come here to just fulfill a ibadah, to fulfill an act of worship. This is the ultimate ibadah. This is the ultimate act of worship. That is supposed to wipe us clean. If you already have in your mind that you will go back and you will practice in the exact same way that you're practicing now, and you will continue to insist on the same disobediences that you're insisting on now, and you will continue to neglect the same obligations that you're neglecting now, then you're not here for rebirth. You need to think in that way. This is rebirth. This is another chance at life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to have that full rebirth of self. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to return home as pure as the day that our mothers gave birth to us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be in charge, to conquer the shaitan, as opposed to being conquered by him, and to center Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that we do until the day that we meet him. Allah